Long story short, we're here today for another Zabbix webinar to talk about advanced database monitoring. And we previously had like a couple of ones. We talked about SNMP, we talked about performance issues, and all of those webinars are recorded and available in Initmax website. So if you want to check those out, please do. We have like quite a lot of information covered in all of those. But before we start with database monitoring, still, as for any other webinar, I think it's makes sense to do a little bit of introduction. Who I'm actually am. What makes me confident to sit here and talk about Zabbix and hopefully teach you something. So, my name is Dmitry Lambert. Most of you who know me most likely know me from a lot of YouTube videos about Zabbix. I've been doing that stuff for like last 7 or 8 years, something like that. And I think at this point we have something around like more than 150 videos where some of them are like already a bit outdated comparing to the recent versions of the Zabbix, but still cover the main concepts of monitoring and how you need to do things. Aside from making a YouTube videos about Zabbix for the 7 years, I also actually worked in Zabbix here in headquarters in Riga, Latvia. I started as a support engineer, quite fast, transferred to be also a trainer and travel a lot, US, Europe, all sort of different regions. Provided a lot of trainings for the Zabbix for different companies, consultancies, turnkeys, yeah, and later moved like from the technical stuff to more like management positions, being head of product, involved in release of the Zabbix Cloud and so on and so on. So, kind of feeling a bit safe to say that I have a good experience with the Zabbix, and I think the biggest value is that I have this experience not only working in one single setup, one single monitoring environment, but working with all sort of different environments, different niches, different requirements of the customers, and stuff like that. So I've seen quite a lot. And today, like advanced database monitoring, why to do database monitoring? I think we could ask like the same question to any service that you can monitor with a Zabbix, but it's always important to emphasize that for some reason, many think that Zabbix works best, or let's say that Zabbix is suited to do network monitoring, like all of the SNMP stuff, what we covered in the previous versions, and also, of course, server monitoring, like Windows and Linux that you can do with the agents. But database is a very much crucial part of any company. Like it's hard to imagine nowadays some sort of business, some sort of the company that doesn't require database. No matter what they do, no matter what service they're providing, there always will be something. And at this point, it doesn't really matter. Are we talking about MySQL or Microsoft SQL or Postgres or MongoDB or maybe some managed databases in AWS or Azure or GCP, whatever, you name it. Like there are all sort of different database engines, and it's always crucial to monitor them because database is always about business continuity. Hard to pronounce this word. Proactive monitoring helps prevent downtime and data loss. So database is usually something that if we have problems with it, our customers definitely feel that. Usually our services just start to work. We are not able to provide our services. Things are going bad. It's a critical infrastructure component from the backbone of most business applications, bottleneck identification and performance impact. Also, like no matter what we have, may it be some mobile application, some e-shop facing our customers, usually heart of everything is a database. And if our database will have some performance issues, it doesn't matter that let's say Linux server that is hosting our web store is healthy, and the network communication is good. If our database is overloaded, customers will definitely start to feel this degraded performance, and it's negatively going to affect everything that we're doing. Resource utilization and capacity planning, like database consumes significant system resources, CPU, memory, disk, and disk IOPS. And basically, like whenever we talk about database monitoring, it's important to understand that we can have like two concepts of what we exactly monitor. Like we can monitor the database as an engine, right? As something that we are running, and we can also monitor data inside our database. And in this case, like each business, each use case will have its own data. For some, that might be some financial stuff where you would want to trigger some sort of anomalies. For some, those are be just again taking same example with the stores, some sales data or stuff like that. And no matter what data you have, no matter how many tables there are or how big there are, stuff like that, all of that can be monitored with a Zabbix. Like if we talk about this, like you can even monitor Zabbix database with a Zabbix as well, whatever you might need. And yeah, so all sort of different databases. We could have a Postgres, which probably is one of the most common ones if we talk about a SQL databases across all sort of different use cases and businesses, just because it runs very good. There is MariaDB, MySQL, Timescale DB, SQLite, Redis, MongoDB, whatever, and all of those can be monitored by the Zabbix. If we talk about the best practices, database credentials are sensitive, and this is something people tend to forget. And not only when we're talking about database monitoring, but when we're talking about creating some sort of credentials in your database. Same applies like when we are just setting up Zabbix and you need to create a user inside a database for your Zabbix front end and also for your Zabbix server. What we usually do is just grant all privilege, grant all permissions. We grant like read, write, create, delete, anything that you could in theory run inside a database. We give it to the user, which is going to be used, let's say, by the front end. But the best practice would be to always limit all of your permissions and give only what is really required for application to run. And in case if we're talking about the monitoring, then usually just the read permissions are going to be most sufficient for you to achieve the result that you are looking for. Think about the best way how to use authentication. Like we're always going to need some way how we authenticate with a database, and there are different ways how you can do that. First option is like configuration files. You can store your database database user and database password. Sometimes in some monitoring types, it could be the Zabbix Agent configuration file as example, where you have the all sort of parameters for your modules or user parameters. In some cases, it might be ODBC configuration parameters if we're talking about monitoring data within the database itself. We can also always use regular passwords in the front end. Like whenever you're creating an item, you are obligated to provide username and password, and also perhaps a database which you are planning to monitor if we talk about the database name. And in the front end itself, you can also use like user macroses to, first of all, make this username and password like available for usage globally. If you have more than one host, then you can just create a user macro called db user and password called db password, and just use that in all of your hosts and all of your monitoring settings just to provide this username and password. And you can also choose like a secret macro to actually hide the value itself, so that Zabbix admins, as example, if we talk about the front end permissions or Zabbix users, they will not have an option to to see what kind of password do you actually have. But as a super admin, you're still going to have an option to see it. Um, there are different methods and technologies how you can monitor any database that you might want to monitor. And it's always, I guess, it's critical to decide which one fits you better because each of them serves like better for its own cases. For agent-based monitoring, we have Agent 2 plugins for major databases. And here it's important. Let me open some visuals for you as well. So we have here Zabbix packages. Yeah, so let me make this a bit smaller. Whenever we're installing Zabbix, we basically, depending on the ways how we want to install it, most likely we run it from the packages, which I believe is still one of the most frequent ways how to get it up and running. So you just install the repository as the first step, and then you install all sort of the packages that are related to the Zabbix that will be like Zabbix server, Zabbix frontend, and so on. And here we also have like Zabbix Agent, but important that we have Zabbix Agent and we also have Zabbix Agent 2. And many people question like what is actually the difference, which one is better. And my personal opinion that like the Zabbix agent, the usual one, the regular one written in a C, is more stable, but Agent 2 has much more advantages in terms of monitoring options. Agent 2 is written in a Go, and for Agent 2, you have a lot of plugins that allow you to create much more complicated monitoring use cases and basically achieve the things that you would not be able to achieve with the regular Zabbix agent of the version 1. Both of them can run on the same system. Like you can have agent 1 and agent 2 simultaneously. The only thing that you need to think about is that listening ports of those agents do not overlap. And yeah, so if we talk about the database monitoring, then the biggest advantage will come from the Agent 2 because that one has already a lot of the plugins available out of the box. Once you just install it, and installation is same as for the Agent 1, just yum install. And also, there are a lot of modules that are available. They're not available like out of the box. You need to install them separately, but installation of those modules is again also very simple. But later on, we'll have this webinar actually is going to be more about the practical stuff I have set up ready. So we're going to try to monitor Postgres database today and with all sort of different monitoring types. So we'll see what's the difference there. There's also direct database querying through the ODBC for SQL-based monitoring, which handles native database connections. So basically, we create a user with a user and password and use this user through the ODBC drivers to connect to the database, to our Postgres, and connect to the database inside the Postgres. And then we can run select queries to actually receive some sort of the data that is being hosted there. Application interfaces, like we can use JMX for Java-based databases and HTTP API monitoring as well to receive usually some sort of the payload in the JSON data, which is going to give us health and performance metrics about a database engine itself. Then we can process and analyze that with the triggers. And network level monitoring, of course, we can talk about a database performance and all stuff within the database as much as we want. But if we'll have just some generic network availability issues and our database will not be available for some reasons, then obviously things are still not going to work. So it's still important and also mandatory in some way to monitor also the network stack. Agent 2 plugins, which is the first one, plugins for the Zabbix Agent 2 database monitoring. Some of them are included in installation package, like Postgres requires a separate installation, but again, you shouldn't be scared about it. Like if depending how long you work with a Zabbix, if it's also like 5+ years and you remember the times of Zabbix like 3.0 and something like that, then usually everything that is not available out of the box and requires separate installation back then caused a lot of trouble, and you need to handle with a lot of scripts, dependencies, libraries, different versions, make sure that those match. And overall, it was a big pain to set up any custom monitoring. Right now, if we talk about like installing not available out of the box plugins for the Agent 2, it's literally just yum install. If you have a good relationship with a Go, and you can write plugins yourself. You can create even more interesting stuff. But also, reality is that like nowadays in the era of AI, when like vibe coding and all of that stuff is very popular, even without any knowledge of coding and development and Go, you pretty much easily can create all sort of stuff that you are required to monitor. You can create custom plugins. In my experience, like even if we talk about some cloud code with a cursor or anti-gravity for a Google, it is a bit more difficult with a Go exactly to match all of the requirements of the Zabbix. You might want to feed in some examples of some existing plugins for it to learn how they should look, and then you can start creating your own ones. Available plugins for MySQL, MariaDB, Percana. Microsoft SQL requires separate installation, Oracle, MongoDB, and Redis. Agent 2 plugins installation. Built-in plugins, MySQL, Oracle, Redis as example, no additional installation required. External plugins, Postgres, MSSQL, MongoDB. So this is how you install them. And I already have my CLI. I'm going to zoom in a bit. I already have stuff installed here, but basically, whenever we just start and understand that, okay, we now need to monitor some sort of the database, we need to spin up an agent, agent two in this case. And if you come to the question like where this agent should actually be located, whether it should be on the server where my database is running, or it should be like on Zabbix server machine, or where. Reality is that it's not that important. The agent can be installed in whatever place you want it to be. The most important thing is that agent is able to access the database that you plan to monitor. Like in my this lab environment, I have everything installed on my local host. But even if that would be distributed monitoring, I could have a agent here, like on a Zabbix server, monitoring Postgres server somewhere else, just ensuring that the network connectivity is available. But like if you decide that, okay, we just start, the only thing that you need to do is yum install Zabbix Agent 2 and minus Y to just confirm everything. So nothing to do because I already have it installed. And once that is installed, like you could go VI, it has the same place for the configuration files as the Zabbix agent. And I have both of the agents installed here. So there's agent 2 for agent 2, which is written in a Go, and there's the regular agent. Like if you have both of them, or if you're just installing, be careful, don't mix up. If you will install not agent 2 but agent, then obviously you won't be able to do any of this monitoring that we're going to do here. And if we check the configuration file, Zabbix agent2.conf, we kind of have basically the same parameters that we are used to see in the regular agent file. We have, as example, server and host name, those like what else? Server active and pollers, all the usual stuff. Uh, all the usual stuff that we are used to see in agent configuration file. But in the end, there is also Zabbix Agent D include directory where we will have all of the additional stuff for the modules that we actually installed. And like what we need to do, as example, if we want to install these plugins that are not available out of the box, is just run yum install Zabbix Agent 2 plugin PostgreSQL as example, -y. I think I also already have it, is already installed, dependencies resolved. But if I would not have it, it would be just simple installation of any as any other package on a Linux system. These are coming from the Zabbix official repository. So if you installed Zabbix server and front end, so you already probably have a repo here, so that will not cause problems. There's also a lot of different plugins available from the community. You can find something from the GitHub as example, then you just grab that plugin and put it in the correct place and start use it. If you talk about Windows, then there's a separate URL where you can just download Zabbix Agent 2 plugins, and that will contain all of the separately installable plugins for you. Since I will be showing example of how to monitoring the Postgres, I thought that you guys also might want to have this same lab in your environment and in your home lab. So I also included steps of how do we actually install everything. And what we're doing here, we're installing Postgres 18, the latest version, latest stable version. And what we're doing is we're adding a repository, and it's kind of important and a best practice, like depending on which kind of distribution you're running. I have Alma Linux 9. Let's see, Red Hat release 9.4. If you have like Alma Linux or maybe Ubuntu or Debian, your distributions of your Linux most likely already have some Postgres and MySQL versions included into their repositories. So in theory, even without running this command, you would be able to just type yum install Postgres server, whatever. But the only thing is that usually inside the official repos of the Linux distributions, there's not up-to-date version. So if I will try to install like Postgres from official Linux distro repositories, most likely I would get something like older version of the Postgres. So it's much better to add official repo. Just Google how to install Postgres on Alma Linux 9 as example. Then what we do, we disable the Postgres from our official distribution and install PostgreSQL 18 server and PostgreSQL 18 contribution package. Then we are required to initialize PostgreSQL database. That's basically does the initial setup of our database, and at that point we are good to go. So whenever you are here in the CLI, like you need to log in to your database shell. And if we talk about MySQL, I have it here installed as well. It's usually for many, it is much more easier. You just type MySQL and there you go. You're inside, and then type quit and you're outside. For Postgres, people try to type like PostgreSQL, Postgres, especially if they work previously a lot with a MySQL, they kind of expect that it's going to work like this. It doesn't. In case of the Postgres, you need to sudo -u Postgres and then type PSQL. That brings us to the Postgres database, right? And if we want to quit, then we do the \q. That gets us out of here. The commands that we're running here is creating a new user. Here I just have my new user with a password, my secure password. So for you, I would suggest to pick something that you will remember, even if you are setting it just for the lab environment. So I don't know, create like user Zabbix with a password Zabbix, which I believe is like the most common username and password combination for all sort of Zabbix tutorial videos. Then I'm creating a database inside of Postgres, create database my database. I'm granting all privilege, which already As we discussed in the first slides, is definitely not a best practice. Like if my goal is to set up the monitoring, that user is definitely not going to need all privileges. It's going to need only read access to run some select queries. Grant schema permission, grant all on schema public to my new user. Make sure that you use like the same username here as you created when you run a create user. Otherwise, as well, it's not going to work. Not initially, not when we're going to talk about like monitoring with Agent 2 collecting the performance data of our Postgres, but whenever we're going to talk about ODBC monitoring, when we will monitor the actual data inside the database, so we need to have something. And for the sake of that something, what you need to do is, again, get here in your Postgres shell and create connect to the database that we just created and create a table employees with these examples. Like you can figure out the schema whatever you want. You can again talk with AI to suggest you something, figure in more fields, whatever, and then we're adding just some sort of the sample data. It's nothing fancy, nothing from the production, but we're just gonna need something to receive the data with our Zabbix. Agent 2 plugin configuration. So first thing first, we need to check the include directive in the Zabbix config file, which I already kind of showed you, right? So if we go here, let's see Zabbix underscore agent2.conf and search for, well, we don't need to search. We already have include here. So everything that is going to be in the etc Zabbix agent2.d folder and ending will include .conf will also be automatically loaded by the Zabbix agent whenever we restart. And if right now I will check what do I actually have in that folder, Zabbix agent 2.d. Here I have a directory plugins. And inside the plugins, I have a configuration files for all sort of different plugins. Some of them, as we learned previously, are part of the out of the box installation, but Postgres, as example, is the one that I've just installed separately with yum install from the previous slides. We can set the connection parameters. So how we will be connecting to our database either in the plugin configuration files or directly in the Zabbix Agent 2 configuration files. So we can explore what we have here. Vim and Postgres conf. Somewhere we should have username for session connection, and somewhere we also have passwords. So, and also sessions database. Those are like three parameters that we need to, first of all, connect to some sort of the database in our Postgres using username and using a password to monitor some sort of the data. So we can write it like here in our Postgres config file for the plugin. We can write it in a Zabbix agent configuration file itself, or additionally, we can configure it in the frontend macro and pass with the item key call. So basically make those settings part of item configuration in the Zabbix frontend. Which one is better? I guess it depends like very much from use cases and overall different setups and different constraints for your case. Like if you don't normally have access, SSH access to the place where the agent is installed, then obviously whenever you will need to change the username and password or database name, it's not going to be so easy for you to access it. So for you, it might be easier to just have everything through the front end. If on the front end you have every second employee in the company is Zabbix administrator and you don't want to leak credentials to your databases, You want to hide it like completely from the front end. In that case, you might want to include it as part of the plugin configuration file. We also can change set the custom SQL queries path. And basically, whenever we talk about this plugin for a Postgres, we are basically talking about built-in template that we also have in a Zabbix. I will let me show you how it looks like in a Zabbix.